I used to believe that the hardest thing in the world was convincing Victoria Ashford to smile. I was wrong. The hardest thing was walking away after I finally saw her smile. 3 years ago, when I first met Victoria, everyone warned me about her. Don't expect her to remember your name. Don't make jokes around her. Don't think you are special just because she trusts you with important tasks. Those were the things people told me when I became her executive assistant at Ashford International. They weren't wrong. Victoria Ashford was the definition of untouchable. At 32 years old, she was the youngest CEO in the company's history. She was brilliant, ruthless in negotiations, and famous for never showing weakness. The media called her the Ice Queen. Her employees called her impossible. Her competitors called her dangerous. But I knew something they didn't. Victoria Ashford was lonely. I discovered that during my first month working for her. It was after midnight when I found her still sitting in her office, staring at a stack of documents she had already read 3 times. "You should go home," I said. She didn't even look up. "I don't pay you to tell me what to do." "Ethan." "I know." "Then why are you still here?" I placed a coffee on her desk. "Because you haven't eaten since breakfast." That finally made her look at me. Her blue eyes narrowed. "Are you monitoring my meals now?" "No." "Then how do you know?" "Because every day at noon, you say you aren't hungry. At 3, you forget about lunch. At 8, you pretend coffee counts as dinner." For a moment, she just stared at me. Most people would have apologized. Most people would have been nervous, but I wasn't trying to challenge her. I was just telling the truth. Finally, she picked up the coffee. "You are strangely observant." "I have to be. I work for you. No one else has ever noticed." Her voice was quieter than usual. That was the first time I realized something. The woman everyone feared wasn't cold. She was simply used to nobody caring. 6 months later, my life changed completely. Victoria was facing a problem. Her grandfather, the founder of Ashford International, had passed away and left a condition in his will to maintain control of the company. Victoria needed to prove that she had a stable personal life. Her family members were already waiting for her to fail. Her uncle wanted the CEO position. The board wanted someone more traditional. And suddenly, the woman who could destroy billion-dollar companies with a single decision was trapped by something as simple as marriage. I still remember the night she called me into her office. She didn't ask me to sit. She just placed a document in front of me. "What is this?" I asked. "A marriage agreement." I looked at her. Then I looked back at the paper. "You want me to marry you?" "Yes." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because I thought she was joking. Victoria didn't joke. Her expression didn't change. "Ethan, I'm sorry. It's just, I wasn't expecting that sentence today." "I know. You are serious." "Very." I picked up the agreement. 1 year. A legal marriage. Separate private lives. No romantic expectations. No interference. A perfect business arrangement. You thought of everything. I had to. I looked at her. "And why me?" That question made her pause. Only for a second, but I noticed. "Because I trust you." Those 5 words meant more to me than she probably understood. Victoria Ashford trusted almost nobody. "So this is just business?" "Yes." Her answer came immediately. Too immediately. I smiled slightly. "Okay." She looked surprised. "You agree?" I said okay. Most people would ask for compensation. I'm not most people. No. Her eyes stayed on me. "You're not." The wedding was small. No reporters. No interviews. No romance. At least, that was the plan. For everyone else, I became Victoria Ashford's husband overnight. But behind closed doors, we were still 2 people pretending. At first, the strange thing was, the contract was supposed to make us act like strangers. Instead, it slowly made us become something else. Victoria started leaving coffee on my desk. She started remembering my schedule. She started texting me when she worked late. One night, I received a message from her. "Have you eaten?" I stared at my phone for almost a minute, because those were my words, the same words I had asked her hundreds of times. I replied, "Are you worried about me, Mrs. Ashford?" Asterisk, asterisk. 3 minutes later. "Don't call me that." I smiled. "Why? You're my wife." Asterisk, asterisk. A full 5 minutes passed. Then, only legally, I looked at that message. For some reason, it felt like she was trying to convince herself more than me. 3 years passed quickly. Too quickly. Somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking of Victoria as my employer. I stopped thinking of our marriage as a contract. I fell in love with my wife. The problem was, she didn't know. Or maybe she knew and refused to admit it. I never pressured her. I knew Victoria. She was someone who built walls around herself because she was afraid someone would hurt her. So I waited. I thought eventually she would realize. I was wrong. The day our contract expired, Victoria called me into her office. There was a folder on her desk. I already knew what it was, the divorce agreement. She looked at me. "Ethan, I forced myself to smile. 3 years went by fast. Her expression changed slightly. You knew today was the date. Of course. She looked away. The agreement was only for 3 years. I know. You understand what happens now. I nodded. Yes. The room became strangely quiet. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. At least, I didn't let it. Victoria watched me sign. For the first time in years, she looked uncertain. Ethan. I stopped. Yes. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I waited. She looked at the papers, then at me. Finally, she said, "Are you really leaving?" That question hurt more than I expected, because I wanted her to ask that 3 years ago. Not today. I put down the pen. Victoria, this was always the agreement. Her eyes changed. That's what you think? I didn't understand. What? She looked away. Nothing. I picked up my suitcase later that afternoon. I had worked beside her for 3 years. I had slept in the guest room of her house. I had celebrated every company victory with her. I had been there when she was sick, when she was exhausted, when she cried silently after losing her father. But in the end, I was still just a man from a contract. Before leaving, I placed my wedding ring on the table. Victoria walked in and froze. "What are you doing?" I looked at her. "Returning what belongs to you." Her face immediately became cold. "Don't say things like that." "Why?" "Because..." She stopped. I waited, but she didn't finish. I smiled sadly. "Goodbye, Victoria." I turned around. "Ethan." I stopped for a second. I hoped she would say something. Anything. "Don't leave. Stay. I need you." But she only said, "Take care." Those 2 words broke something inside me. I nodded. "Goodbye, Victoria." Then I walked away. I thought leaving Ashford International would be the end. I thought ending our contract marriage would finally set both of us free. I thought Victoria Ashford didn't love me. I was wrong, because the next morning, when I opened my apartment door, she was standing there, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday, holding the divorce papers, except they were torn in half. She looked at me with an expression I had never seen before. Not anger, not confidence, fear. "Ethan." I froze. "Victoria." She stepped closer. Then, in front of me, the woman who never showed weakness whispered, "I made a mistake." I didn't know what to say. She looked at me, and then she said the words that changed everything. "Come home, husband." My heart stopped, because Victoria Ashford, the Ice Queen CEO, had never called me that before, and before I could respond, she kissed me. I stood there completely frozen. Not because Victoria Ashford was standing in front of my apartment, not because she had just torn up our divorce papers, but because she had called me something I never thought I would hear from her. Husband. For 3 years. That word existed only on legal documents, on contracts, on official records, never from her lips. And yet, yesterday, when I left her house, I thought I had lost everything. Now she was standing in front of me, looking at me like she was the one afraid of losing something. I touched my lips, still trying to understand what had just happened. Victoria noticed my expression. Her face immediately became serious. "Say something." I blinked. "What exactly do you want me to say?" Her eyes narrowed. "Anything, Victoria. You just showed up at my apartment, destroyed a divorce agreement, called me your husband, and kissed me. I know. And you expect me to have a normal reaction?" For a moment, she looked away. That small gesture surprised me, because Victoria Ashford never avoided eye contact. Not with investors, not with enemies, not with anyone. But now, she looked almost embarrassed. I should have done this sooner. I stared at her. "Done what?" "Told you the truth." I didn't answer, because I was afraid of what she would say. After 3 years of pretending, sometimes the truth came too late. Victoria took a step closer. "Ethan, I never wanted the divorce." I laughed quietly. Not because it was funny, because I didn't know how else to react. "You signed the agreement." "I know." "You told me it was only business." "I know." "You watched me leave." Her expression changed. "I know." I looked at her. Then what am I supposed to think? For the first time since I met her, Victoria looked like she didn't have an answer. 3 years ago, I thought I understood Victoria. I thought she was someone who valued control more than feelings. But standing there, I realized I had misunderstood something. Victoria wasn't afraid of losing control of a company. She was afraid of losing control of her heart. And apparently, she had been fighting that battle alone. "Ethan." Her voice softened. "Do you remember the night my father died?" I froze. Of course I remembered. It was the first time I saw Victoria break. The entire world knew her as a powerful CEO. But that night, she was just a daughter who lost the only person who truly understood her. She had called me at 2 a.m. No explanation, no words, just my name, Victoria. She looked at me. "Do you know why I called you?" I shook my head. I thought I was calling my assistant. I smiled bitterly. "That's what I was." "No." Her answer was immediate. "You weren't." She looked directly at me. "You were the only person I trusted." I didn't speak. She continued. "That night, I had hundreds of people around me, lawyers, executives, family members. Her fingers tightened, but I only wanted one person. Me. Yes. The answer was so simple, so honest. It hurt. Victoria, I should have told you. She lowered her voice. I should have told you that you weren't just my assistant. I looked away. Then why didn't you? Silence. A long silence. Finally, she said, because I was scared. Those words shocked me more than the kiss. Victoria Ashford was scared. Not of failure. Not of losing money. Not of losing power. Of me. Scared of what? She looked at me. That you would leave if you knew. I didn't know what to say. Because that was exactly what happened. She hid her feelings. I assumed I had none. And then I left. I stepped aside. Come in. Victoria looked surprised. You're letting me in? It's cold outside. A small smile appeared on her face. You are still worried about me. I looked at her. Some habits are hard to change. That smile disappeared because she knew what I meant. 3 years. 3 years of caring. 3 years of loving her quietly. She walked inside. My apartment was nothing like her mansion. It was simple, small, normal. Victoria looked around. You live here now? Yes. Why? I shrugged because I wanted a life that was mine. Her expression changed. Was your life with me not yours? That question caught me off guard. I looked at her. Victoria, I was your employee. You were my husband, only on paper. Her face became serious. Do you really believe that? I didn't answer, because honestly, I didn't know anymore. Victoria sat across from me. For a woman who controlled billion-dollar decisions, she looked strangely nervous. Ethan. Yes, I want to start over. I almost laughed. Start over? Yes, Victoria, you can't just erase 3 years. I don't want to erase them. Her voice became stronger. I want to keep them. I stared at her. She continued, I remember every morning you brought me coffee. Victoria, I remember when you stayed outside my office for 4 hours because I was sick and refused to admit it. I looked down. I remember when you defended me in front of the board. Anyone would have done that. No. She shook her head. Nobody would have. Her eyes became softer. You always made me feel like I was a person. I didn't speak because those words meant everything. Then my phone rang. I looked at the screen. A message from my former colleague. Ethan, are you free? The board meeting is exploding. Victoria disappeared, and everyone is panicking. Asterisk, asterisk. I looked at Victoria. She noticed. What happened? Your company. Her expression immediately changed. Don't worry about it. Victoria, I came here for you, and your company needs you. She looked frustrated. That company always takes everything from me. I smiled slightly. Maybe. I stood up. But don't let it take you away from yourself. She stared at me. You still talk to me like that. Like what? Like I'm not the CEO. I smiled. Because when it's just us, you're not. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then Victoria whispered, Ethan, yes. Do you still love me? The question hit harder than I expected. I looked at her. After everything, after leaving, after trying to move on, the answer was still the same. Yes. Her eyes trembled. But I don't know if I should. She frowned. Why? Because I don't want to be loved. Because you are afraid of losing me. She froze. I don't want to be your husband because you suddenly realized you miss me. Her expression changed. I want to be your husband because you choose me. The room became silent. Victoria looked at me for a long time. Then she walked closer. I choose you. My heart moved, but I didn't answer. She continued. Not because of the contract. Not because of my grandfather's will. Not because of the company. She placed her hand over mine. Because when you left yesterday, I realized something. Her voice became quiet. I've spent my entire life building an empire. But the only thing I couldn't replace was you. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But love wasn't just about hearing the right words. It was about trust. And trust was something we had broken. Before I could answer, my phone rang again. This time, it was my former boss. I answered. Ethan? Yes. We need you back. I frowned. What? Victoria's uncle made his move. The board is calling an emergency vote. I looked at Victoria. She immediately understood. No. What? You are not going. I raised an eyebrow. Victoria, I just got you back. She looked almost angry. I'm not letting you disappear again. I smiled. That's not how this works. She crossed her arms. Then how does it work? I looked at the woman who had chased me for the first time in her life. By you trusting me. She didn't answer because she knew I was right. After 3 years of protecting her, it was finally time for her to learn something. I wasn't leaving, but I also wasn't returning as a contract husband. I wanted something real. That night, Victoria Ashford made a decision that shocked everyone. She walked into the emergency board meeting without her usual cold expression, without her CEO mask, and she announced, "My husband will be joining me." The entire room went silent because everyone knew one thing. Victoria Ashford hated showing weakness, but she had just introduced the one person who could destroy her carefully built image. Me. And then she looked at me, not like an employee, not like a contract partner, but like a woman who had finally chosen the man she loved. I still didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time, I believed our story wasn't ending. It was finally beginning. I never expected Victoria Ashford to introduce me as her husband in front of the entire board, especially not after spending 3 years pretending our marriage was nothing more than a legal arrangement. But there she stood, the woman who had built an empire by showing no emotion. The woman who could make executives twice her age nervous with a single look. She was holding my hand, in front of everyone, and somehow, that was more shocking than any business crisis. The conference room went completely silent. I could feel dozens of eyes on us. Some were confused, some were surprised, some were clearly enjoying the drama. Victoria's uncle, Richard Ashford, was the first person to recover. He leaned back in his chair and smiled. "So, this is the reason you disappeared from the meeting." Victoria didn't even look at him. "Choose your words carefully." "Richard," he laughed, always so serious. Then his eyes moved toward me. "And this must be Ethan Callaway." I nodded. "Nice to meet you." Richard smiled. "Interesting. The famous husband who never appears in public." I understood immediately. This wasn't a greeting. It was an attack. I looked at Victoria. Her expression became colder. But before she could speak, I answered, "You're right." Everyone looked at me. I wasn't involved in public events because Victoria and I agreed to keep our private life separate. Richard raised an eyebrow. "So you admit your marriage was fake?" The room became tense. Victoria's hand tightened around mine. She was angry, not at me, at him, but I shook my head slightly. I didn't need her to defend me. Not this time. Our marriage started with a contract. I looked directly at Richard, but that doesn't mean it stayed that way. Nobody spoke. Richard's smile disappeared. I continued, "The problem is that people like you only understand documents." I glanced at Victoria, not people. For the first time, I saw something unexpected in Victoria's eyes. Pride. After the meeting ended, Victoria followed me into the hallway. The moment the door closed behind us, she turned around. "You shouldn't have done that." I looked at her. "Defending myself? Putting yourself in the middle of this?" I smiled. "Victoria, I've been in the middle of this for 3 years." She froze. I softened my voice. "I'm not afraid of your family. You should be." "No." I shook my head. "I'm afraid of something else." Her expression changed. "What?" I looked at her. "That you will keep protecting me because you feel guilty." The words hurt her. I knew they did. But they were true. "Ethan, I don't want you to choose me because you lost me." She became quiet. "I want you to choose me because you love me." For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she whispered, "I do love you." My heart stopped, because this was the first time Victoria Ashford had said those words. Not implied, not avoided, actually said them. "I love you." She looked at me. "I have loved you for a long time." I swallowed. "Then why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes lowered. "Because I thought you deserved someone better." I almost laughed. "Better? Someone who could give you a normal life." I stared at her. "Victoria, do you know what I wanted?" She didn't answer. "I wanted you to look at me and see Ethan. Not your assistant, not your employee, not your contract husband." I stepped closer. "I wanted to be the person you chose." Her eyes became wet, and that scared me, because Victoria never cried. Not even when the world expected her to. That night, Victoria insisted on driving me home. I looked at her. "You don't have a driver?" "I do." "Then why are you driving?" She kept her eyes on the road. "Because I wanted time with you." That answer was so honest that I didn't know how to respond. For years, Victoria avoided personal conversations. Now she was creating them. The woman who once treated emotions like weaknesses was finally letting me see her. After a few minutes, she said, "Do you remember our first anniversary?" I smiled. "Which one?" She looked at me. "The first year of our contract marriage." I laughed. "Victoria, you forgot." "I didn't." "You didn't say anything. I bought you something." I turned toward her. "What?" She looked embarrassed. "I left it on your desk." I frowned. "You gave me a new laptop?" "Yes." "Victoria, that was a company gift." "No." She shook her head. "It wasn't." I stared at her. "Why didn't you tell me?" She was silent. Then, because saying I wanted to give my husband a gift felt too dangerous. My chest tightened. "You were afraid of a sentence?" "I was afraid of what came after it." "What came after?" She looked at me. "If I admitted you were my husband," her voice became softer, "I would have to admit I didn't want the contract to end." When we arrived at my apartment, neither of us moved. Finally, Victoria said, "Come back." I looked at her. "Victoria, not because of the contract." She turned toward me. "Not because of the company. Come back, because I want my husband home." My heart wanted to say yes immediately, but my mind stopped me. I need time. The words clearly hurt her, but she nodded. I understand. That surprised me. The old Victoria would have demanded an answer. The new Victoria accepted it. Before she left, she stopped. Ethan, yes. She looked at me. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you still wear your wedding ring? I looked down. I wasn't wearing it. I had left it on her table. Her eyes followed mine. I thought so. There was sadness in her voice. I hesitated. Then I said, but I never stopped being married to you. She looked at me. Why? I smiled slightly, because taking off a ring doesn't change how I feel. For the first time, Victoria looked completely speechless. The next morning, something happened that proved our problems were far from over. I received a call from a lawyer. Not Victoria's lawyer. Mine. Ethan Calloway? Yes. My office represents Mr. Richard Ashford. My expression changed. Why? We would like to discuss the validity of your marriage agreement. I immediately understood. Richard was attacking us. What does he want? A pause. Then, he believes your marriage was only a business arrangement. I laughed quietly. That's convenient. The lawyer continued. He also believes you have been manipulating Victoria Ashford's emotions to gain influence over the company. That made me angry, not because of me. Because of her. Tell Mr. Ashford something. What? If he wants to attack Victoria, he can do it himself. I paused, but using me as an excuse is cowardly. After hanging up, I stood there for a long time. Then my phone rang again. Victoria. I answered. Ethan. Her voice sounded different. What happened? Silence. Then she said, Richard contacted you. I frowned. How did you know? Because he contacted me too. And her voice became cold. The old Victoria returned. The CEO. The fighter. He told me to choose. I waited. He said I can't have both. Both. The company. A pause. And you. My hand tightened around the phone. Victoria. She interrupted me. I told him something. What? Her voice was calm. Certain. I said I spent my whole life protecting Ashford International. But now, I will protect my husband. I closed my eyes, because that was the moment I realized something. Victoria Ashford wasn't just chasing me. She was fighting for me. And maybe I had been wrong. Maybe the woman who once signed a contract with me was finally ready to love me without one. But Richard Ashford wasn't finished. And the biggest challenge to our marriage was just beginning. I always thought Victoria Ashford was strongest when she was standing alone. I was wrong. Victoria was strongest when she finally stopped pretending she had to be alone. For 3 years, I watched her carry everything by herself. The company, the expectations, her family's pressure, the loneliness nobody saw. She built walls so high that even the people closest to her couldn't get through, including me. But now those walls were coming down, and the strange thing was, I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was on the other side. After Richard Ashford threatened us, I expected Victoria to become distant again. That was what the old Victoria would have done. She would have handled everything privately. She would have told me, don't worry, I can solve it. She would have carried the entire burden herself. But this time, she didn't. That evening, she came to my apartment. No assistant, no driver, no security, just Victoria. I opened the door and looked at her. You came. She raised an eyebrow. Is that surprising? A little. Why? Because the old Victoria Ashford would have sent someone else. She looked at me for a moment. Then she smiled slightly. I don't want to send someone else anymore. That simple sentence affected me more than she knew. Because for years, I wanted her to understand one thing. I didn't want to be another person she ordered around. I wanted to be the person she came to. I stepped aside. Come in. She entered quietly. Then she placed a folder on my table. I looked at it. What is this? Documents. That sounds dangerous. She ignored my joke. The board meeting is tomorrow. I became serious. What happened? Richard has convinced several board members that our marriage was only a strategic arrangement. I nodded. He's not wrong. Her eyes immediately lifted. What? I sighed. I'm saying that's how it started. Her expression softened. But that's not how it ended. No. I looked at her. It wasn't. Victoria sat down across from me. I need you there tomorrow. I didn't answer immediately. She noticed. Ethan, I don't know if that's a good idea. Her expression changed. Why? Because this isn't about me. Yes, it is. No. I shook my head. It's about you. She looked confused. Richard wants to prove I only married you for the company. Exactly. So if I appear beside you, he wins. She frowned. How? Because then everyone will say I am using your relationship to protect your position. For once, Victoria didn't have an immediate answer. That was rare. I continued. I don't want to be your weakness. Her eyes became serious. Ethan, I want to be your choice. The room became quiet. Then Victoria stood up. She walked toward me. You still don't understand. What? She looked directly at me. You think I am protecting you. A pause. But I am protecting us. Those words stayed with me because that was the difference. Before, Victoria protected everything except herself. Now she was finally protecting something personal, something that mattered. The next morning, the board meeting became the biggest event in Ashford International's history. Not because of the company, because of us. When Victoria walked into the conference room, with me beside her, every person turned. Some looked shocked, some whispered, some smiled like they were watching a drama. Richard Ashford looked the most satisfied. Interesting. Victoria didn't react. Let's begin. Richard leaned back. Before we discuss the company's future, I think we should discuss something else. I knew where this was going. The CEO's marriage. The room became silent. Victoria's expression didn't change, but I felt her hand move slightly closer to mine. A small gesture, almost invisible, but I noticed. Richard looked at me. Ethan Callaway. I nodded. You married Victoria 3 years ago. Yes. Under an agreement. Yes. So your relationship was a transaction. Before Victoria could speak, I answered, no. Everyone looked at me. Richard smiled. You disagree? I do. Why? I looked around the room. Because a contract can force two people to sign their names. I paused, but it cannot force someone to stay awake all night when the person they care about is sick. Silence. It cannot force someone to remember how someone takes their coffee. Nobody moved. It cannot force someone to stand beside another person when the entire world turns against them. I looked at Victoria, and it definitely cannot force someone to fall in love. The room went completely quiet. Richard's expression changed. He didn't expect that, but he recovered quickly. Love. He laughed. You expect us to believe this? I didn't answer. Victoria did. Yes. Everyone turned toward her. Richard looked surprised, because Victoria Ashford rarely spoke emotionally. But today, she didn't hide. I expect you to believe it, because it is the truth. She stood. For 3 years, I told myself Ethan was part of an agreement. Her voice remained steady, but I was lying. Nobody spoke. He was the person who stayed when everyone else left. She looked at me. He was the person who saw me when everyone else only saw my title. Her voice became softer, and I was foolish enough to think losing him would feel the same as ending a contract. Her eyes moved back to the board. It doesn't. A pause. It feels like losing my family. I didn't expect what happened next. One of the oldest board members, Mr. Harrison, slowly stood up. I have a question. Victoria nodded. Go ahead. He looked at me. Mr. Callaway. Yes. If the contract never existed, would you still choose her? The question surprised me, but my answer was easy. Yes. Even knowing her family? Yes. Even knowing the pressure? Yes. Even knowing you may lose everything. I smiled slightly. I already left once. Everyone listened. I walked away from a life with Victoria because I thought she didn't need me. I looked at her, but I was wrong. My voice became quieter. She didn't need someone to save her. She needed someone who would stay. Victoria looked down, and for the first time, I saw tears in her eyes. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, Richard failed to convince the board, but he wasn't defeated. Not completely. As we left the room, he stopped us. Victoria. She turned. You chose him over your family. Victoria looked at him calmly. No. Richard frowned. I chose myself. That answer surprised everyone, including me. She continued. For years, I lived the way everyone expected. Today, I finally made a decision for myself. And she looked at me. And that decision is my husband. That night, after everything was over, Victoria and I sat quietly in my apartment. For the first time in weeks, there was no crisis, no board members, no contracts, no divorce papers, just us. Victoria looked at me. I owe you an apology. I smiled. For what? For making you feel like you were temporary. I didn't answer because she was right. She looked at her hands. I thought if I never admitted how much you meant to me, losing you wouldn't hurt. I looked at her. Did it work? She shook her head. No. A small smile appeared. It hurt more. I laughed softly. Then she reached for my hand. Ethan. Yes. I want to ask you something. What? She looked nervous. The woman who negotiated billion-dollar deals was nervous. Can I have my ring back? I looked at her. My ring. She nodded. The one you left on my table. I smiled. Why? Her answer was immediate. Because I don't want a contract ring anymore. She held my hand tighter. I want a real one. My heart skipped. Victoria, I know I have a lot to prove. She looked at me. I know words aren't enough. Then she whispered, but please let me prove it. I stared at the woman in front of me. The same woman who once couldn't say she cared. The same woman who now was asking for another chance. Finally, I smiled. Okay. Her eyes widened. Okay. Okay. She laughed. A real laugh. Not the polite one she used at business events. Not the controlled one she showed the world. A genuine laugh. And in that moment, I realized something. I'd spent 3 years trying to make Victoria Ashford smile. Now, she was smiling because of me. But just when I thought everything was finally changing, my phone rang. The caller ID made Victoria's expression change instantly. Her lawyer. I answered. Hello. The voice on the other end was serious. Ethan, we have a problem. I frowned. What happened? A pause. Then, the original marriage agreement has been leaked. My heart sank. What? The media has it. I looked at Victoria. Her face turned pale because we both knew what that meant. Tomorrow morning, the entire world would know our marriage started as a contract. And this time, we wouldn't just be fighting Richard Ashford. We would be fighting everyone. The first thing I saw when I woke up the next morning was my own name on every news website. Ashford CO's secret contract marriage exposed. For a few seconds, I just stared at my phone. Not because I was surprised. I knew this day might come, but because I never expected the truth to feel so cruel. A relationship that had become the most important thing in my life was reduced to a headline. A contract, a business arrangement, a lie. My phone kept vibrating. Messages, calls, notifications. People who had never cared about me suddenly had opinions about my marriage. Who is Ethan Callaway? Did the CEO use an ordinary man as a temporary husband? Was this all a strategy to secure control of Ashford International? I put my phone down. The worst part wasn't what they said about me. It was what they said about Victoria. They painted her as someone who manipulated people, someone who couldn't love, someone who only cared about power. And I knew that wasn't true. When I arrived at Ashford International, the atmosphere was completely different. Usually, people greeted Victoria with respect. Today, they avoided eye contact. Whispers followed us everywhere. I walked beside her toward the elevator. She was silent, too silent. That worried me. Victoria. She didn't answer. Are you okay? The elevator doors closed. Only then did she speak. I'm sorry. I looked at her. For what? For this. She looked at the floor. You finally came back, and now everyone is attacking you. I frowned. Victoria, you should have stayed away from me. That sentence made me stop. What? She looked at me. If you had never returned, you wouldn't have to deal with this. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything, she was blaming herself again. I stepped closer. Look at me. She hesitated. Then she did. You still don't understand. What? I didn't come back because things were easy. Her eyes moved slightly. I came back because I chose you. I continued. And choosing someone means staying when things become difficult. She didn't speak. I softened my voice. That's what marriage means. For a moment, her expression changed, like she wanted to believe me. The emergency meeting started 10 minutes later. The entire executive team was there. Richard Ashford was sitting at the end of the table. Of course, he looked satisfied. I suppose everyone has seen the news. Nobody answered. Victoria sat down. Let's discuss business. Richard smiled. Business. He tapped the newspaper in front of him. Victoria, the company is facing a reputation crisis. She looked at him. Because you leaked private documents. His smile disappeared for half a second, then returned. Prove it. The room became tense. Victoria's lawyer had suspected him, but there was no direct evidence. Richard leaned back. The problem isn't who leaked it. The problem is that it is true. He looked at me. Your marriage was created by contract. I stayed quiet. Richard continued. The shareholders will question whether Mr. Callaway has influenced your decisions. Victoria's expression became cold. Enough. No. Richard shook his head. This concerns the company. Then he looked at the executives. Can anyone here honestly say they believe this marriage was real from the beginning? Silence. That silence hurt, because I understood. To them, it wasn't about feelings. It was about appearances. Then something unexpected happened. One of the executives, Sarah Whitmore, spoke. I can. Everyone looked at her. Richard frowned. What did you say? Sarah looked at Victoria. I can say I believe it. She turned toward the room. I have worked with Victoria for 8 years. She paused. I have never seen her trust anyone the way she trusts Ethan. Nobody spoke. Sarah continued. Before him, Victoria treated everyone like a possible enemy. After him, she started caring about people. She looked at Richard. You call him a contract husband. She shook her head. I call him the reason our CEO became human. Victoria looked surprised. I was too, because sometimes other people saw things we failed to see ourselves. But Richard wasn't finished. He placed another document on the table. Then perhaps we should discuss this. Victoria's expression changed. What is that? Richard smiled. A shareholder complaint. I picked up the document. The complaint claimed that Victoria had violated company ethics by allowing her personal relationship to affect leadership decisions. Basically, they wanted to remove her. I looked at Victoria. For the first time that morning, I saw uncertainty in her eyes. Not fear, something worse. Exhaustion. She had fought for years, and now the people closest to her were trying to take everything away. I reached under the table. I held her hand. She looked at me. I whispered, "Don't fight alone." Her fingers tightened around mine. After the meeting, Victoria locked herself in her office. I found her 20 minutes later. She was standing by the window, not working, not reading documents, just standing there. I knocked. "Come in." I walked inside. She didn't turn around. I should have known. Known what? That this would happen. I frowned. "Victoria." Everyone around me eventually leaves. Her voice was quiet. "My father, my relatives, my friends." She laughed softly. "Even you." I immediately shook my head. "No." She turned. "I left because I thought you didn't love me." The honesty surprised both of us. I continued, "Not because I wanted to leave." Her eyes softened. "Then why didn't you tell me?" I smiled sadly. "Because I was afraid." That surprised her. "You?" "Yes." I walked closer. "I was afraid that if I told you I loved you, you would only stay because you felt responsible." Victoria looked at me. "Ethan." So I left. I paused. "But leaving you was the hardest thing I have ever done." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Victoria walked toward me, slowly, carefully, like she was afraid I would disappear again. "I hate that I hurt you." I looked at her. "I know. I hate that I made you think you were only a contract. I know. I hate that I waited until I almost lost you." Her voice cracked. "I know." She looked up at me. "But I love that you came back." That sentence hit me, because it was so Victoria. She didn't make dramatic promises. She simply told the truth. I reached out, and this time, she was the one who leaned closer. No cameras, no contracts, no expectations, just us. Then she whispered, "Ethan." "Yes. Can I tell the world something?" I smiled. "That depends." She looked confused. "On what?" "Whether it's another CEO announcement or something personal." For the first time all day, she smiled. "Personal? Then yes." She took my hand. "Tomorrow." "Tomorrow." She nodded. "I'm holding a press conference." I immediately became serious. "Victoria, are you sure?" "Yes." "What are you going to say?" She looked at me. "The truth." The next day, every major media outlet gathered outside Ashford International. Everyone expected Victoria Ashford to apologize, to deny the marriage, to distance herself from me. Instead, she walked onto the stage, and I stood beside her. The reporters immediately started asking questions. "Ms. Ashford, was your marriage a business arrangement? Did you manipulate Mr. Calloway? Are you planning to end this relationship?" Victoria waited until everyone became quiet. Then she spoke. "Yes." The crowd erupted. My heart sank for a moment. But then she continued. "The marriage started because of contract." Silence. "But that contract ended 3 years ago." She looked at me, and my feelings did not. The entire room froze. Victoria reached for my hand. "I made many decisions in my life based on responsibility." A pause. "But choosing my husband," she smiled, "is the first decision I made because of love." I looked at her. The Ice Queen CEO was gone. The woman standing beside me wasn't a CEO. She was my wife. But before the press conference ended, one reporter stood up. "Ms. Ashford." Victoria looked at him. "What about the rumor that Mr. Calloway only stayed because of your wealth?" The question was cruel. I expected Victoria to answer, but she didn't. She looked at me, and I understood. This time, she wasn't protecting me. She was trusting me. I stepped forward. "Then let me answer." The room became silent. I looked directly at the cameras. "My wife could buy almost anything in this world." A pause. "But she couldn't buy my loyalty." I smiled slightly, because I gave that to her freely. And then I said the one thing nobody expected. I left Victoria Ashford once. Everyone listened. But if I had another chance, I looked at her. I would choose her again. That night, after the press conference, Victoria and I finally had a quiet moment. She looked exhausted, but happy. "You know, you just became the most talked about man in America." I laughed. "That sounds terrible." "It is." She smiled. "But what?" She leaned closer. "I like that everyone knows you're mine." I raised an eyebrow. "Mine." She nodded. "Mine." I smiled. "That's very possessive for someone who used to say our marriage was only a contract." Her cheeks turned slightly red. "People change." "Really?" "Yes." She looked at me, especially when they almost lose the person they love. I held her hand, but deep down, I knew this wasn't over, because Richard Ashford had lost the public battle, but he still had one final move. And this time, he wasn't going after the company. He was going after me. After the press conference, I thought things would finally calm down. For the first time in weeks, Victoria and I were no longer hiding. The world knew the truth. Our marriage had started as a contract, but it had become something real, something neither of us could deny anymore. I thought that would be enough. I was wrong, because people like Richard Ashford didn't lose. They waited. 3 days after the press conference, I received a message from an unknown number. "Meet me alone. We need to talk about Victoria." Asterisk, asterisk. I stared at the message. I already knew who it was. Richard. My first instinct was to ignore it. But then another message appeared. "If you truly love her, you will come." Asterisk asterisk. That sentence annoyed me, not because of the threat, because Richard acted like he knew Victoria better than I did. He didn't. He knew her as a competitor, as an heir, as someone standing between him and power. I knew her when nobody was watching. I knew the woman who secretly kept old birthday cards because she couldn't throw away memories. I knew the woman who pretended she wasn't tired but fell asleep at her desk. I knew the woman who said she didn't need anyone but looked relieved every time I came back. So I went. Richard was waiting at a private club downtown. When I walked in, he smiled. I knew you would come. I sat across from him. Say what you need to say. He laughed. You really are different from the men around Victoria. Is that supposed to be a compliment? No. He looked at me. It's a warning. I stayed silent. Richard placed a folder on the table. You need to leave Victoria? I almost smiled. That's why you called me. No. He leaned forward. Because if you don't leave, she will destroy everything she built. I frowned. What are you talking about? He opened the folder. Inside were documents, financial records, company reports, legal papers. I looked through them. Then I stopped because I saw Victoria's name. What is this? Richard smiled. The reason she can never have a normal life. I looked up. Explain. Victoria's father left behind more than a company. He paused. He left behind enemies. I said nothing. Richard continued. Years ago, before he died, Victoria's father made a decision. What decision? He secretly protected certain investors from bankruptcy. I frowned. That doesn't sound like a crime. It wasn't. Richard's expression became darker, but the people who benefited from it later turned against him. I looked at the documents, and Victoria has been cleaning up that mess ever since she became CEO. I looked at him. Why are you telling me this? His answer was immediate. Because you're the only thing that can destroy her. I narrowed my eyes. What? Victoria has survived everything. He pointed at me, but she has never had someone she couldn't afford to lose. I understood. Richard wasn't threatening the company. He was threatening my relationship. You think I will leave because things are difficult? No. He smiled. I think you will leave because you love her. I returned home later that night. Victoria immediately noticed something was wrong. You met Richard. It wasn't a question. I looked at her. How did you know? Because you have the same expression you had 3 years ago. I froze. What expression? The expression you make when you're trying to protect me. I looked away. She knew me too well now. What did he say? I didn't answer. Ethan. Her voice became softer. Please don't shut me out. That sentence surprised me, because that was exactly what she used to do. And now she was asking me not to. I sat down. He told me about your father's old problems. Her expression changed. What exactly? I explained everything. The documents, the investors, the threats. When I finished, Victoria was quiet. Too quiet. Is it true? She nodded slowly. Part of it. I looked at her. What does that mean? She sat across from me. When my father died, the company wasn't as stable as everyone thought. Why didn't you tell me? She looked down. Because I didn't want you involved. I sighed. Victoria, I knew this would happen. What? You would worry. She looked at me. You always do. I couldn't deny it. She smiled sadly. And that's why I loved you. The words stopped me. Loved, not love. Past tense? I looked at her. What do you mean? She quickly shook her head. Nothing. No. I stood. Victoria. She avoided my eyes. What? You said loved. Silence. Finally. She admitted. I was afraid. Afraid of what? That if you knew everything. Her voice became quiet. You would realize I was too much. My heart hurt. Because this wasn't the CEO speaking. This was the woman underneath. The woman who spent her whole life believing she had to be perfect to be loved. I walked closer. Victoria. She looked up. You were right about one thing. Her expression changed. What? You are too much. She looked hurt. Until I continued. You are too stubborn. A small smile appeared. Too independent. Another step. Too good at pretending you don't need anyone. Her eyes softened. And too important to me. She looked away quickly. I knew she was trying not to cry. The next morning, something happened that changed everything. Victoria received an emergency call. I watched her face change. Where? A pause. No. Her voice became colder. I'll handle it. She ended the call. What happened? She looked at me. The board. What about them? They found new evidence. My heart sank. Against you? She nodded. What evidence? She hesitated. Then she said, they found documents proving my father hid financial problems before his death. I frowned. But you said that wasn't illegal. It's not. Then why does it matter? Because the board will say I knew about it. And did you? She looked at me. No. I believed her immediately, but the world wouldn't. The emergency board meeting was worse than before. This time, they weren't questioning my marriage. They were questioning Victoria's leadership. Richard stood at the front. I don't want to remove Victoria. Everyone looked surprised, including me. He continued. I want to protect the company. Victoria stared at him. You mean you want my position? Richard smiled. Only if necessary. The board members looked uncertain. I understood his strategy. He wasn't attacking her directly. He was making himself look reasonable. Then he revealed the final piece. However, there is one issue. He looked at me. Mr. Calloway. I frowned. What? Richard smiled. If Victoria truly had no knowledge of her father's actions. He paused. Why did she transfer her company shares to you 2 years ago? The room exploded. I turned to Victoria. What? She looked shocked. Because she knew. I didn't know. Richard placed the document on the table. A transfer of shares. To her husband. Without board approval. Everyone stared at Victoria. I looked at her. Victoria. She stood immediately. Ethan, I can explain. But the damage was done because for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing the company. Fear that I would misunderstand her. The meeting ended without a decision, but the damage had already happened. On the way out, Victoria stopped me. Ethan, I turned. She looked desperate. I need you to listen. I waited. Those shares, she swallowed. They weren't to control you. Then why? Her voice became almost a whisper. Because 3 years ago, I was afraid. Afraid? She nodded. I thought one day you would leave. I froze. So I wanted to make sure you would always have something that belonged to you. I stared at her. The woman everyone called cold. The woman everyone thought only cared about power. Had secretly given me part of her world. Not to control me, but to protect me. I never told you because... She looked at me. Because I was embarrassed. Embarrassed. Yes. She smiled sadly. Because I realized I was trying to protect the one person who never needed my protection. That night, I finally understood something. For 3 years, I thought I was the one quietly loving Victoria. I thought I was the one sacrificing. I thought I was the one staying. But maybe she had been loving me in her own way. A way hidden behind documents, behind silence, behind her cold expression. I reached for her hand. Victoria. She looked at me. I'm sorry. Her eyes widened. For what? For thinking you didn't care. A tear finally fell. Just one. But I saw it, and I knew how much it meant. She whispered, Ethan, yes. Are you still my husband? I smiled. I held her hand tighter. Victoria. She looked at me. I never stopped being your husband. For the first time in days. She smiled. But neither of us knew that Richard still had one last card. A card that would force me to make the hardest decision of my life. Because the next morning, I received a message. A message that could destroy everything. Leave Victoria now, or she loses Ashford International forever. Asterisk, asterisk. When I saw that message, I thought I had already experienced every kind of pain. I was wrong. There was something worse than leaving the woman you loved. It was being forced to leave her while knowing she finally loved you back. The message was simple, cold, cruel. Leave Victoria now, or she loses Ashford International forever. Asterisk, asterisk. I stared at those words for a long time. At first, I was angry. I was confused. Finally, I was afraid, not for myself, for her, because I knew Victoria. She could survive losing money. She could survive losing power. She could survive people criticizing her. But Ashford International was more than a company. It was her father's legacy, the only thing she had spent her entire life protecting. I didn't tell Victoria about the message immediately. That was my first mistake. I knew it, but I needed time. I needed to understand what Richard was planning. I needed to find a way to protect her without hurting her. The problem was, Victoria knew me too well. That evening, when she came home, she immediately noticed something was wrong. You are quiet. I looked up. Am I? Yes. She placed her bag down. You only become quiet when you are worried. I smiled slightly. You know me too well. Because I pay attention. I froze. Those words sounded familiar. Because they were my words. The same thing I told her years ago. Now she was saying them to me. I looked away. She walked closer. Ethan. Yes. Tell me. I stayed silent. She sighed. Please. That one word made it impossible to lie. I took out my phone. I showed her the message. Her expression changed immediately. Not fear, anger, pure anger. Richard, I don't know. She looked at me. I do. Her voice became cold. He always does this. What? When he can't defeat me, he tries to make me lose what matters. I looked at her, and now that is me. She didn't answer, because we both knew. The next morning, Victoria confronted Richard. I wasn't there. She asked me not to come. At first, I wanted to refuse, but then I understood. This wasn't about proving myself. This was about trusting her. So I stayed. For the first time in years, I trusted Victoria to fight her own battle. 3 hours later, she returned. I knew something happened the moment she opened the door. She looked exhausted, not physically, emotionally. What did he say? She didn't answer immediately. She sat down beside me. Then she said, he admitted it. Admitted what? That he sent the message. I frowned. Why? Because he wants me to choose. Choose what? She looked at me. The company. A pause. Or you. My chest tightened. Victoria. She smiled sadly. Ironic. Isn't it? What? For years, I thought I had to choose between love and responsibility. She looked at me. Now someone is forcing me to do exactly that. I reached for her hand, but she held mine first. Ethan, yes. I need you to promise me something. What? If things get worse. I already knew what she was going to say. Don't. She stopped. I looked at her. Don't ask me to leave. Her eyes softened. Why? Because I already did that once. I paused, and I regretted it every day. That night, we sat together for hours. No business, no Richard, no company, just us. It was strange, because after 3 years of marriage, this was the first time we actually talked like a real couple. Victoria looked at me. Can I ask you something? Anything. When did you fall in love with me? I smiled. That's unfair. Why? Because I don't know the exact moment. She looked curious. Really? No. I thought about it. I think it happened slowly. How slowly? I laughed. Maybe when you remembered my birthday. Her eyes widened. I remembered. You pretended you didn't. I wanted to surprise you. You left a gift on my desk without a note. She looked away. I wasn't good at those things. I smiled. Or maybe when you started asking if I had eaten. She smiled slightly. I learned from you. Or maybe when you defended me in front of the board. She looked at me. You deserved it. Or maybe, I paused. When you looked at me like I mattered. Her expression softened. And you? What? When did you know? I looked at her. The moment you came to my apartment. She became quiet. The moment I saw you standing there with the divorce papers torn apart. I smiled. I realized the Ice Queen CEO was finally afraid. Her cheeks turned slightly red. I wasn't afraid. I raised an eyebrow. Really? She looked away. Maybe a little. I laughed. And she smiled. A real smile. The next day, Richard made his final move. He called an emergency shareholder meeting. His goal was simple. Remove Victoria. Replace her with himself. The media was already waiting outside. The headlines were everywhere. Ashford CEO faces removal after hidden financial scandal. Everyone expected Victoria to lose. Everyone expected her to fight alone. But this time, something was different. Because when we arrived at the meeting, I wasn't walking behind her. I was walking beside her. The shareholder meeting started. Richard presented everything. The old documents, the accusations, the rumors. Then he looked at Victoria. I don't hate you. Victoria. She almost smiled. That is a lie. Richard ignored her. I simply believe the company needs stability. Then he looked at me. And unfortunately, your husband has become a weakness. The room became quiet. I stood. Everyone looked at me. Victoria immediately reached for my arm. Ethan, I looked at her. It's okay. Then I faced the shareholders. I think everyone here has one question. Nobody spoke. Who am I? Richard smiled. Exactly. I nodded. Most people here see me as a former assistant. A pause. Some see me as a contract husband. I looked at Victoria, but nobody knows what I actually did. Richard frowned. What are you talking about? I reached into my folder and placed a document on the table. The entire room changed because it was something nobody expected. 3 years ago, before I signed a marriage agreement, I had discovered something. The company was losing money through a hidden supplier agreement. I investigated. I found the problem, and I fixed it, but I never told anyone because Victoria didn't want credit for herself. She wanted the company protected. I had kept every document, every report, every piece of evidence. Not because I planned to use it, because I was doing my job. Richard looked shocked. You? I looked at him. You thought I was only Victoria's assistant. I shook my head. I was the person standing beside her when nobody else was. The shareholders began whispering. One by one, they reviewed the documents. Then one senior shareholder stood. I remember this. Everyone looked at him. This report saved the company 3 years ago. He looked at me. You were responsible? I nodded. But Victoria approved the final decision. The shareholder smiled. Then both of you protected this company. Richard's expression changed. For the first time, he looked defeated. But Victoria wasn't looking at him. She was looking at me. Her eyes were full of emotion because she finally understood something. I hadn't stayed beside her because of contract. I stayed because I believed in her. The vote ended. Richard lost. Victoria remained CEO. But when everyone left, she didn't celebrate. She walked directly to me. Ethan, yes. She looked almost angry. Why didn't you tell me? I smiled. About what? Everything. I shrugged. Because you were already carrying enough. Her eyes became wet. You are unbelievable. I know. She shook her head. You spent years protecting me. A pause. And I spent years thinking you were temporary. I stepped closer. Victoria. She looked at me. I don't need you to protect me anymore. She froze. I smiled. I need you to love me. For a moment, she said nothing. Then she stepped forward and hugged me. Right there, in the empty conference room. No cameras, no audience. Just us. I love you. Ethan Callaway. The words I waited 3 years to hear. Finally. I love you too. Victoria Ashford. She held me tighter, then whispered, So, what? When are we getting married? I laughed. Victoria, I'm serious. We are already married. She smiled. Not a contract marriage. She looked at me. A real one. My heart softened, and for the first time, I realized something. The contract that brought us together was ending, but the love that replaced it was only beginning. But there was still one thing left. The world knew about our contract marriage. They knew the beginning. They didn't know the ending. And Victoria had one final surprise planned. A surprise that would change everything. Because 1 week later, she stood in front of thousands of people and introduced me not as her husband, but as the man she chose. I used to think love was something that happened when two people were lucky enough to meet at the right time. I was wrong. Sometimes love was standing beside someone for years and not realizing they were already your home. Sometimes love was leaving because you believed you weren't wanted, only to discover someone was silently fighting to bring you back. And sometimes love was Victoria Ashford standing in front of the entire world and choosing me. Not because of contract, not because of a company's future, not because she needed a husband, because she wanted me. 1 week after the shareholder meeting, Victoria told me she had something planned. Of course, she didn't tell me what. That was very Victoria. The woman who could organize a $1 billion business deal in one afternoon somehow still enjoyed keeping secrets from me. I was sitting in her office when she walked in. "You need to come with me tonight." I looked up from my coffee. "That sounds suspicious." She raised an eyebrow. "Do you not trust your wife?" I smiled. "That depends. On what? Whether my wife is planning a business meeting or something terrifying." She tried to hide her smile. "You are impossible." "No, I'm just experienced." She shook her head, but I noticed something. She was happy, really happy. Not the polite smile she gave investors, not the controlled expression she showed the media. A genuine happiness, the kind I'd spent 3 years hoping to see. That evening, Victoria brought me to the Ashford Foundation's annual charity event. The same event I had attended once during our first year of marriage. Back then, I stood quietly behind her. I was introduced as her assistant. Nobody knew I was her husband. Nobody knew the woman everyone admired came home every night and asked me if I had eaten. But tonight was different. The moment we entered, people turned, not because of Victoria, because of us. The media had already reported everything. The contract marriage, the divorce papers, the shareholder battle. Everyone wanted to know what happened next. A reporter approached. "Ms. Ashford, are you and Mr. Calloway officially continuing your marriage?" Victoria stopped. I looked at her. For a moment, I thought she would give the usual CEO answer. Something careful, something professional. Instead, she took my hand. "Yes." The reporter immediately asked. Even after everything that happened, Victoria looked at me, then back at the cameras. Especially after everything that happened. The reporter looked surprised. "Can you explain?" Victoria's fingers tightened around mine. 3 years ago, I entered a marriage agreement because I needed stability. She paused, but somewhere along the way, I stopped needing a contract. Her eyes moved toward me. I started needing him. The crowd became silent. I felt my heart tighten because Victoria Ashford wasn't someone who confessed feelings easily. But tonight, she wasn't hiding anymore. Later that evening, Victoria walked onto the stage. Thousands of people watched her. The same woman who once hated showing vulnerability stood under the lights and smiled. "Everyone knows the story," she began. "They know my marriage started as a contract." A few people whispered, "But they don't know the most important part." She looked at me. The contract had an expiration date. A pause. My feelings didn't. I looked down because even after everything, hearing her say those words still affected me. Victoria continued. "Ethan Calloway was never my weakness. He was never someone I used. He was the person who stood beside me when nobody else saw how tired I was." Her voice softened. "He reminded me that I wasn't just a CEO. I was a person." The entire room was quiet. Then she said, "And today, I want everyone to know." She reached toward me. "The man standing beside me is not my contract husband." A pause. "He is my husband because I chose him." After the event ended, we walked outside. For once, there were no reporters, no executives, no pressure, just us. Victoria looked at me. "You are quiet." I smiled. "I'm thinking." "About what?" "That I never imagined this day would happen." She looked confused. "What day?" "The day Victoria Ashford publicly admits she loves someone." She rolled her eyes. "That sounds dramatic." "It is." She smiled. "You enjoy teasing me now. I earned that right." "Ow!" I looked at her. 3 years of being married to the Ice Queen. She laughed. A real laugh. And I love that sound. A few days later, Victoria surprised me again. She came home earlier than usual. That alone was shocking. I looked at the clock. "Are you sick?" She frowned. "Excuse me. You left work before midnight." She crossed her arms. "I can have normal hours." "Since when?" "Since my husband complained." I smiled. "Your husband?" She walked closer. "Do you have another husband?" "No." "Then yes." I laughed. She sat beside me. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Ethan, yes. I want to redo our wedding." I looked at her. "What?" "Our first wedding wasn't really ours." She looked down. "It was a transaction." I understood. She wanted a memory that belonged to us. Not a contract, not an arrangement. A real beginning. When? She smiled. "Next month." I raised an eyebrow. "You already planned everything?" Of course. Victoria, what? You planned a wedding before asking me? She looked away. I knew you would say yes. I laughed. You are very confident. I know my husband. That word, husband, it still felt different when she said it, because now it was real. 1 month later, I stood beside Victoria again. But this time, there are no legal documents, no business reasons, no conditions, only a promise. When it was my turn to speak, I looked at the woman in front of me, the woman who changed my life. Victoria. Her eyes met mine. I used to think I was just a temporary part of your life. She looked emotional, but I was wrong. I smiled, because somehow, the woman who claimed she didn't need anyone became the person I couldn't live without. A few people laughed softly. Victoria smiled. I continued, I don't promise that life will always be easy. I don't promise I will never annoy you. She raised an eyebrow. I definitely won't promise that. Everyone laughed, but I promised one thing. I held her hand. I will choose you every day, not because of a contract, not because of responsibility, because you are the person I want beside me. After the ceremony, Victoria and I stood alone for a moment. She looked at me. Do you regret leaving? I thought about it. The pain, the loneliness, the fear. Then I smiled. No. She looked surprised. No, because if I never left, I touched her hand. You might never have realized you wanted me to stay. Her eyes softened. That sounds like something you would say. What does that mean? It means you always find a way to make everything about me. I smiled. Maybe. She leaned closer. But now, she smiled. Now everything is about us. Years later, people still talked about Victoria Ashford, the billionaire CEO, the woman who built an empire, the ice queen who never showed emotion. But the people closest to her knew the truth. Victoria Ashford wasn't cold. She was just waiting for someone she could trust. And somehow, I became that person. The contract marriage that was supposed to last 3 years became a lifetime. The woman who once signed papers with me became the woman who chose me. And every morning, when I woke up and saw her beside me, she would smile and say the same thing. Good morning, husband. And every time, I smiled, because after everything we went through, I finally understood. The best love stories don't begin perfectly. Sometimes they begin with a contract. Sometimes they begin with two strangers pretending. Sometimes they begin with a goodbye. But if two people are willing to choose each other again, they can turn a temporary promise into forever.